How's Lent going? Still not eating chocolate? Still not having an extra glass of wine? Still making sure you remember not to eat meat on those days of abstinence? No, me neither. Every week in Lent, from Sunday to Sunday, we're reminded of our inability to be faithful on our own. We're reminded week in, week out, that we can't get to Easter unaided. In that first reading, we heard the Lord in the burning bush promise Moses the liberation of Israel. Could they free themselves unaided from slavery in Egypt? No. In this reading from the Gospel of St. Luke, we hear the story of the sudden deaths of the Galileans, the sudden deaths of those killed when the Tower of Siloam collapsed. And the terror for them that the Lord speaks of in this Gospel is that they died unprepared. They died unaided. They hadn't taken the opportunities laid before them by the Lord to enable them to make a good death, to enable them to repent. The people of Israel, the Galileans in the story, the people at Siloam, are very much like us. We seesaw between trying as hard as we possibly can and failing, and then in despair not trying at all. Because we don't trust God any more than the Israelites trusted God. They escaped from Egypt after miraculous intervention, and in no time they're walking across the desert wishing they were back in Egypt, longing for the onions and the cucumber and the mint they had with their food there, not able to keep up the intensity of obedience to the Lord that had led them through that first Passover. These stories of the Old Testament are not there to tell us the story of a long-lost people. These stories of the preaching of Christ are not there to tell us the stories of a rabbi in Israel 2,000 years ago. These stories are here to tell us the stories of our own lives. We know only too well, we start Lent, I'm not going to eat chocolate, I'm not going to have anything to drink, I'm going to give up my morning coffee, I'm going to not eat meat. In no time, we fall. We decide we're going to spend an extra 5 minutes in prayer. We'll make sure we say the rosary every day. And in no time, we've forgotten. We promise that we're going to be generous. We're going to give to the poor, even from the little we have. And in no time, we've found excuses to keep our pocketbooks in our pocket, our purses in our trousers. Because we try to do these things on our own. We fall into thinking that God once intervenes and is then no more interested in us. We forget that every time we sin, we have a door back to the Lord's love. A door that has only 5 letters on it, S-O-R-R-Y, which is pronounced grace. When we say sorry, we're responding to grace. When we say, Lord, I can't do this on my own. We're responding to grace. That word should be on our tongues at all times in this Lenten season. Like the people of Israel, we're journeying to the land of milk and honey. Nearly 1,000 years after that story of Moses, a great Greek general died in Egypt, a general called Alexander. His heart broken because, as it was said, he was but 30, and yet there were no more worlds to conquer. And the philosopher, his teacher, said, Alexander conquered half the world, but he didn't conquer himself. Pray God in the rest of this Lent that you be given the grace, you take the opportunities of grace to conquer yourself. That opening prayer of the Mass that Father Leonard prayed referred to those three great tools of spiritual warfare, the three great tools by which we can, with God's grace, come to master ourselves: through prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So, as we nearly get to the middle of this season, halfway on our journey from Egypt to the Promised Land, halfway on our journey from Ash Wednesday to the glory of Easter morning, ask God once again to help you, to give you grace through those three great tools that allow you to master what even Alexander couldn't master yourself.